A retired assassin mourning the loss of his wife receives an unexpected gift that reignites his hope, only to have it violently taken away by a crime lord's reckless son. Fueled by grief and vengeance, he returns to the deadly underworld he left behind. Fighting through waves of ruthless hitmen, he embarks on a relentless pursuit, leading to a brutal showdown. Today we will be recapping the 2014 movie, John Wick. The movie begins with John Wick's car smashing into a wall. John, wounded and bleeding, struggles to climb out. He pulls out his phone and watches an old video of his wife, Helen, on a beach. Lying down beside his phone, he recalls memories of her. Flashing back to earlier days, John remembers moments with Helen, sharing dinner, kissing, and finally the heartbreaking moment when she collapsed in his arms. The scene shifts to Helen in a hospital bed as John gently kisses her forehead. Later, John is seen holding a necklace as he heads to his car, still grappling with the loss of his wife, who had succumbed to a long illness. The day of her funeral arrives, and as the crowd disperses, John remains by her grave, observed from a distance by someone. After the ceremony, John's old friend, Marcus, approaches him. He mentions that it's been a long time since they last met and asks how John is managing. Their brief conversation ends with Marcus saying he just wanted to check in on his old friend. Returning home, John starts tidying up when the doorbell rings. A delivery woman hands him some papers to sign and then gives him a package. Inside, he finds a small beagle. Alongside the puppy is a letter from Helen, in which she writes that she's made peace with her passing and hopes that John can open his heart again. She suggests he start by caring for the puppy, whom she named Daisy. Reading the letter, John is overcome with emotion and sheds tears. When he offers Daisy some bedding, she instead jumps onto his bed, but John gently lifts her and places her back on the floor. The following morning, John wakes up with Daisy by his side, the puppy already forming a bond with him, following him around the house. When John pours himself some cornflakes, he shares a bit with the dog, mentioning that they should get her some proper food. The two spend the day together, driving around. At a gas station, they pull up beside a group of Russian mobsters, including Iosef Tarasov, the son of crime lord Vigo Tarasov. Iosef admires John's car and asks if it's for sale, but John firmly responds that it's not. When Iosef insults him in Russian, assuming John wouldn't understand, John surprises him by responding in the same language. At that moment, he becomes visibly irritated, nearly confronting him before one of his friends steps in, advising him to let it go and wishing John a good day. Later, John heads to an isolated construction site, drifting his car around to release some pent-up frustration. That evening, back at home, he prepares for bed, but has to take Daisy out when she needs to go. As they reach the front of the house, two shadowy figures suddenly confront John, and a third man strikes him in the head with a bat. Daisy whimpers, and the men begin beating John. One of them cruelly kills the dog. The intruders search for John's car keys, and when one finds them, he removes his mask, revealing himself as Iosef. He taunts John to sleep well before delivering a final blow that knocks him out. When John regains consciousness, he finds Daisy lifeless by his side and mournfully lays next to her, gently stroking her head before he eventually buries her. He cleans up his ransacked home while recalling memories of his wife and the brutal events of the previous night. Meanwhile, Iosef drives John's Mustang to Aurelio's shop, requesting clean paperwork and a new license plate for the car. Aurelio immediately recognizes the car and demands to know where Iosef got it. Iosef brags about stealing it and killing the owner's dog. Enraged, Aurelio orders him out, retorting that he doesn't work for Iosef, but only with his father. When Iosef's guard threatens Aurelio with a gun, another friend intervenes, stopping any further escalation. Iosef storms out, vowing to take his business elsewhere. Later, John visits Aurelio's shop to inquire about his car. Aurelio confirms that Iosef, Vigo's son, had it. That night, Vigo calls Aurelio to ask why he hit his son. Aurelio explains that Iosef stole John Wick's car and killed his dog. Vigo's only reaction is a quiet, concerned, "Oh." Realizing the severity of the situation, Vigo confronts Iosef at his home. Handing his son a drink and complimenting his jacket, Vigo abruptly punches him in the stomach, emphasizing the gravity of the mistake he made by crossing John Wick. When a guard offers to leave, Vigo instructs him to stay, forcing him to witness Iosef's punishment. At the same time, John enters his basement with a sledgehammer and begins smashing through the floor, retrieving a hidden stash of weapons and gold coins. Meanwhile, Vigo explains to Iosef who John really is, once his top enforcer, nicknamed Baba Yaga, the one they'd call on to eliminate the most dangerous people. He recounts John's legendary feat of killing 3 men in a bar using only a pencil. Vigo reminds Iosef of how lethal John is, describing the impossible task he once completed to retire and marry Helen. villain, a task so brutal that it solidified the foundation of Vigo's entire criminal empire. Though Iosef arrogantly claims he can handle the situation, Vigo dismisses his confidence, warning him that John will come for him and that there's nothing he can do to stop it. After cautioning Iosef about the trouble he's in, Vigo calls John, hoping to negotiate. John simply hangs up. That evening, Vigo sends a team of 12 assassins to John's house with orders to kill him. However, John handles them with ease, systematically taking down each intruder until he finally stabs the last one through the heart. A police officer then arrives at John's door. Addressing him by name, the officer asks if there's been a noise complaint. When he spots a body behind John, he casually inquires if John is back in the game. John replies that he's just sorting things out. The officer nods and leaves without further question. To handle the cleanup, John calls in a specialized team he's used before. They cleaned up and he paid for their service. Meanwhile, Vigo approaches Marcus, an old friend of John's, and offers him a $2 million contract to kill John. Marcus accepts the assignment. John checks into the Continental Hotel, a haven for underworld figures, where he plans to stay while he's on this mission. He encounters Perkins, another assassin, and Winston, the hotel's manager, and an old acquaintance. When John asks about Iosef's location, Winston informs him that he's at a nightclub called the Red Circle. John heads to the club, where Iosef is partying with his friends. An old associate of John's, who's working as security, thanks him when John advises him to take the night off. Inside, Iosef is reveling in a luxurious Russian bathhouse with champagne and company. John moves through the club's lower levels, eliminating one of Iosef's men as he advances. When Iosef spots John, he immediately flees, while John systematically takes out every hitman standing in his way. Despite his efforts, Iosef manages to escape in a car. Returning to the Continental, John seeks medical attention for a stomach wound inflicted by one of Vigo's men with a bottle. The doctor warns John that his stitches will tear if he overexerts himself. Later that night, Marcus, positioned on a rooftop across the street, watches John's room through his scope. He notices someone approaching John and fires a warning shot to alert him. Perkins, another assassin, bursts in and tries to kill John, explaining that Vigo promised her $4 million if she breaks the hotel's rules and takes him out. They engage in a fierce fight, and John eventually restrains her, offering leniency if she reveals valuable information. She tells him that Vigo's primary assets are hidden in a church basement. John then leaves her tied up with Harry, another hotel regular, as a favor in exchange for a gold coin from their organization. John heads to the church where Vigo has stashed his cash and crucial business records. After shooting the guards, he forces the priest to unlock the vault, dismisses the staff inside, and then sets the entire stockpile ablaze. Meanwhile, Perkins, left under Harry's watch, dislocates her thumb to slip out of her restraints. She sneaks up on Harry, covering his face with a pillow before shooting him. Just as Vigo receives news of the fire at his stash, John launches a relentless attack, taking down most of Vigo's men. However, during the chaos, an SUV crashes into another vehicle, throwing John to the ground and leaving him unconscious. John is taken to an abandoned location where Vigo confronts him. Vigo questions the extreme lengths John is going to for a mere car and dog. John explains that the dog, a final gift from his late wife, held deep personal meaning, and Iosef's actions robbed him of that last connection. He gives Vigo a choice: surrender Iosef or face the same fate. Ignoring John's ultimatum, Vigo leaves him to his henchmen, who attempt to suffocate John with a plastic bag. Meanwhile, Marcus, watching from a nearby building, takes aim and shoots one of John's would-be killers, giving John the chance to eliminate the remaining thug. Now the only one left standing, John fires his revolver at Vigo's getaway car, forcing Vigo to reveal that Iosef is hiding in a safe house in Brooklyn. John heads to the heavily guarded location, taking down every armed guard in his path. He destroys the getaway vehicles with explosives before catching up to Iosef. Without hesitation, John shoots him in the stomach and finishes him off with a shot to the head. Vigo soon receives a call confirming his son's death. Later, John checks out of the hotel and meets Marcus on a bridge, where Marcus encourages him to consider starting a new chapter in his life. Unbeknownst to them, Perkins spots the two together and reports their interaction to Vigo. In response, Vigo sends his men to capture Marcus as he nears his home. They bring him to Vigo, who beats him savagely in revenge for Iosef's death and for not carrying out the contract to kill John. After a brutal beating, Vigo and Perkins end Marcus's life with fatal gunshots. Before leaving, Vigo calls John to inform him of Marcus's death. Vigo then heads to a helicopter that's waiting to fly him out of the city, planning to set up an ambush for John at Marcus's house with Perkins lying in wait. John arrives at Marcus's house, finds his friend's body on the floor. Meanwhile, Perkins is summoned to a meeting with Winston, the owner of the Continental Hotel. She meets him and 4 other men at the Bethesda Arcade in Central Park. Winston informs her that she violated the Continental's school's strict rules, and as a consequence, her membership has been revoked. The four men then carry out her execution. As Winston departs, he encounters the same cleaner who previously helped John dispose of the assassins' bodies at his home and hands him a few coins as payment. Meanwhile, after finding Marcus's body, John decides to hunt down Vigo. While sitting by his friend's body, he receives a call from Winston, who informs him that Vigo is preparing to escape via helicopter. Determined, John tracks down Vigo and his men on their way to the chopper. He attempts to intercept them, ramming his car into theirs. Vigo orders Avi to eliminate John, but John's vehicle collides with Avi, taking him out of the fight. A chase ensues, with Vigo trying to drive John's car off a cliff, but John manages to survive. The two men confront each other in the pouring rain, engaging in a brutal hand-to-hand fight. Vigo tries to stab John, but John uses the blade against himself to gain leverage, breaking Vigo's arm before pulling the knife from his own wound and stabbing Vigo in the neck. Leaving Vigo to his fate, John walks away. Though injured and losing blood, John finds the strength to continue, inspired by memories of Helen. He enters a nearby animal shelter to tend to his wound, and while there, decides to adopt a pit bull puppy. With his new companion, he heads home, ready to begin again. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our video. Watch the next recaps on the screen and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.